there, this is Ross Izzard, and this is the Backcountry Fly Fishing Podcast, where we talk about the stupid things that I've done while backcountry fly fishing. As promised, this episode is called Stupid Games, Stupid Prizes, and it serves a few different purposes. The first is pure entertainment value, right? So I'm going to tell you 3 stories today about times that I screwed up. I have so many stories of screwing up. I think that's partially because I'm self-taught, and so I had to learn so much stuff the hard way. And I think it's partially because I am exceptionally stubborn and more than a little bit stupid. And so I routinely make mistakes. Sometimes I make mistakes that I know are mistakes and go against my own advice. And that deserves to be listened to and laughed at. And I hope that you find that entertaining. So that's thing 1. Thing 2 is prevention. So my hope is that by listening to these things, you will not make the same stupid mistakes and therefore will not win the same stupid prizes. And number 3 is that there are lessons attached to each of these, very specific lessons that I will lay out for you as we go, but things that you can learn so that you have a specific, actionable thing that you can do to hopefully avoid anything like this happening to you while you are out there. So, there's not a whole lot of additional preface needed here. Please don't be dumb, right? Make good decisions. Trust your judgment like we talked about last week. Listen to your intuition, and you'll probably be just fine. It's when you don't listen to that you get yourself in trouble. And when you don't follow your own advice, that's also when you get yourself in trouble. So, overarching TLDR, moral of the story, don't be dumb, especially when you're out in the backcountry, and especially when you're out in the backcountry by yourself. But the longer version is pretty entertaining, so let's go ahead and jump into it. The first story is actually from just a little bit earlier this season, and it's called Trapdoor. You probably heard me mention that I hiked up to an alpine lake at about 11:03, or maybe it was 11:02, I can't remember, pretty early in the season to go catch some early season brook trout, right? A lot of the cutthroat lakes weren't open yet. They're still frozen. The ones that were open had a bunch of cutthroat pretending to spawn. And so I was hunting for brookies, and I decided that I wanted to get out and do a backpacking trip up to this really pretty lake full of really pretty fat brook trout. There's actually an Instagram reel of this, so if you want to go check it out, you can look at it. It shows me walking through a bunch of snow and camping between the snow drifts, and it's all very majestic. It doesn't show you how I screwed up on that trip. So let me tell you about it. So I hiked up there. It's hot down low in the city. It's like 90 degrees. It's like 80 degrees at the trailhead. But up there at 11,000 feet at this stage, there's still like, God, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 feet of snow on the ground. I mean, enough that the trail disappeared and you were having to walk over pretty serious snow to get even to the first lake. And these lakes are sort of a series of lakes. So there's a first lake that's fairly accessible, a second lake up above that that's a little bit less accessible, and then a third lake even above that very few people ever go to. I knew I wasn't going to make it to the third lake. I had checked Copernicus. I saw the satellite images. I knew that it was still frozen. But I did think that I could make it at least to the second lake. And so my plan was that I was going to hike up. I was going to find a place to camp, hopefully not in the snow. And then I was going to go check out the first lake for a little bit the first night, and then head up to the second lake the following day to see if I could find some nicer fish up there. And so I did that. I brought my backpack and hiked all the way up there, set up, camped. Terrible night of sleep. I had a bunch of gear failures. My new ultralight sleeping pad went flat on me a couple of times. It was one of the inflatable ones. The rainfly, one of the guy lines broke in the middle of the night. It was wet and it was cold, and it was just I still had a little bit of a chest cold going on from earlier, and it was kind of a miserable experience, to be honest, but did it, made it up there, made it through the night. Woke up the next day, and going back to last week's episode about when the mountain says no, this was one of those times where the mountain was kind of saying no, right? I had a chest cold. My lungs were tight. I didn't get any sleep. My gear was failing. I was in a shitty mood. And really the correct answer was that I probably should have just been like, ugh, I'll fish the first lake for a little bit and just go back down and be safe. The mountain was telling me pretty loudly in retrospect, not today, go home. Well, I didn't listen, right? I was like, well, whatever. I'm up here and I packed all this shit up here and I want to go see that second lake. So woke up, broke down my camp, grabbed my stuff, and headed up. I fished the first lake a little bit, and then I started trudging up to the second lake. Now, the second lake is only about, as the crow flies, probably only half a mile from the first lake. The trail itself kind of winds its way up there, so it's really closer to a mile, but it was completely covered in snow. There's no trail back there. It's just straight up a snow field and sort of treed in snow piles all the way up to the second lake. And there's a lot of stuff underneath the snow, right? So there's boulder fields, there are tree stumps, there's logs, there's all kinds of stuff that, number one, sort of destabilize the snow because they warm up and they start to melt it and it kind of gets unstable. But number two, they make it really hard for you to know what's underneath what you're stepping on, right? So like for you, it looks like you're walking on a level snow field. The truth is that underneath that, there could be all kinds of ankle breakers and holes between rocks and stuff that like would really potentially hurt you if you were to fall through. Now, of course, I know this, right? This is not my first time hiking in snow. Definitely not my first time being up there for early alpine season. And so I know that this is really not a super great idea. I did not bring snowshoes with me on this trip because, well, candidly, I just felt kind of shitty. I still had that cold. My pack was already pretty heavy. I hadn't really gone through the process of fully optimizing it for the season yet. This was my first backpacking trip of the year. And I was just like, it'll be fine. I'll deal with it, you know? And I was like, if it's that bad, I just won't go. And that's what I told myself. But once I was up there and I was so close to that second lake, right? It's only half a mile up there. There's no trail. I can't follow the trail. So it's going to be this sort of off trail pathfinding navigational thing to get up to that lake. And I'm like, well, I'm here and the snow seems pretty packed and I can make it. So I start heading up. And as I go, I start noticing, the sun's coming up, it's warming up. I got up later than I should have because, well, I got no sleep on account of the gear failures and everything else. And so I'm working my way up there and I'm kind of looking at the snow and it's getting pretty rotten, right? Like I'm slipping through a few inches every now and then. It's kind of getting patchy and slushy in a few places, and it wasn't looking great, right? And I knew that. I looked at it and I'm like, man, this doesn't look so great. And I was even trying to be careful. I was avoiding big rocks because, big rocks will take in heat and then they radiate that heat back around them. So that snow near those rocks is almost always weaker and less stable than other snow. And I was kind of like picking my way up there and being somewhat careful. And I reached this little ridge. Maybe 100 yards from the second lake. And I'm like, okay, I can make it. Like I can almost see the second lake above me at this point. And I look at this little ridge, which is partially exposed to sunlight. It's got a bunch of trees around it, some down trees around it. And I look at it and here's my intuition. I was like, I don't think I should walk on that. That just doesn't look very good. But it was the most direct route. There wasn't really well, that's not true. There were other paths, but they would require me to backtrack a little bit. And the stubborn, stupid part of me was like, well, I'm just going to push on through that. And so I did. And I took, keep in mind, I've had the conscious thought now, don't walk on that. And what did I do? Well, I went and walked on it anyway. So I took about 3 steps and my leg shot through the snow all the way up to my hip. And as it did that, the worst case scenario happened, right? This is like the worst part about falling through these weak trapdoors in the snow. My leg shot underneath a log, a sort of down tree that was buried in the snow, and it got wedged up against the log and then underneath a rock in a way that hyperextended my knee and jammed my shin up into the log and a rock just a little bit past the log. And that is how you break your leg, right? So getting your leg pinned in a weird position and then having that sort of like hyperextension leverage against your shin or your knee or your quad, that's how you break your leg up there and get yourself in really big trouble. And so I shot through up to the hip and I felt just this blinding pain. I mean, I'm a pretty tough dude. I have a pretty high pain tolerance. I know everybody says that, but I like to think that I'm extremely tough. Probably not. Probably no different than anybody else, but you can let me have my fantasy. So it shot through and I had this blinding pain. I mean, I'm talking like eye-watering pain. And I swear I felt a pop And I was like, shit, I just broke my leg. And so I'm sitting there. You can picture me. My right leg is jammed down into the snow all the way up to my hip. I'm sitting there kind of leaning back, moaning with my eyes watering. And I'm like, I just broke my leg. That's it. This is, of all the days that I spent out here, all the years I've spent doing this, this is the day that I'm going to have to call a helicopter and they're going to have to tromp their way up here through the snow and get me. And that's going to be dangerous for them and super embarrassing for me. And my leg's jacked up and I'm not going to hike for the rest of the season. And I flipping knew better and blah, 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 blah. So I'm pissed and I'm mad and I'm in pain and I'm sure my leg's busted. And I just sort of sat back in the snow for a minute and then had to work myself up to pulling my leg out because I didn't know what I was going to find, right? If you've ever seen a compound fracture where you like really break something and the bone's sticking out, it's pretty gnarly, pretty painful, real ugly to look at, not great. And so I'm expecting to pull my leg out and find it as like a spaghetti noodle, right? Or worse. So with extra marinara sauce. So I pull my leg out slowly, wincing, kind of, and I look at it and it is bleeding. My leg is bleeding on the shin and I've got a really nasty kind of bone bruise right across my tibia. But I look at it and I'm like, wait, maybe it's not broken. Doesn't look crooked. No bone sticking out. There's nothing other than some blood. It looks okay. And so I pulled it out. I didn't want to put any weight on it. I scooted myself back. I sat on a log sort of going, ooh, if you ever see the cartoon character where they grab their leg and they go, ah. That's pretty much what I was doing it felt like I was doing it for an hour, but I'm sure it was like 5 minutes. Until the pain finally subsided enough that I was relatively sure I could put some weight on it. And I did put some weight on it. I found a dry patch of ground underneath some trees. I walked around on it a little bit and it hurt pretty bad, but it was functional and it wasn't broken. However, I knew for a fact at that point I was not going to make it to the second lake. It just was not going to happen. So I grabbed my bloody leg. By this time, of course, the sun's even higher up. It's even warmer. Snow's even more rotten. And now I got to make it back through this same minefield of trapdoors in even worse conditions. So I did that. I picked my way very, very slowly down, fished a tiny bit more, but kind of half-heartedly at this point at the first lake because my leg hurt so bad. Went back down, and then I had to shoulder my pack, which again weighs about 50 pounds, and hike that thing like 4 miles down the mountain, or 3.5 miles, whatever it was back then for that particular trip. And it sucked. It was miserable. It was not a good time. I felt like an idiot, and it wasn't great. But it could have been worse, right? That very easily could have been a broken leg. In fact, I am incredibly lucky that was not a broken leg. And if it had been, I would have been in big trouble, right? I mean, I'm probably, a third of a mile off trail, terrible conditions in the snow, down in a bowl where I don't have great satellite reception, even on the Garmin. I mean, I would have been stuck up there for hours waiting for search and rescue. And when they did get up there, it would have been a hell of a thing to get me out. And it would have been awful. And I think I was probably a couple millimeters away from breaking my leg that time. I knew better. I knew I shouldn't do it. Fortunately, I got lucky this time, but it's not something that I would ever do again. And I learned a valuable lesson. When your brain says, hey, don't walk on that, stupid, you should not walk on that. So here is your lesson, or rather lessons from this story. Number one, don't do that. Okay, so don't walk on rotten snow, and especially don't walk on rotten snow without snowshoes. Bring snowshoes if you think you might need them, even if they weigh a little bit extra. Don't be lazy. Just carry the stuff that you need. Don't be like me. And number three, just make better decisions. Like look around and be like, hey, that doesn't look great. I should just be happy fishing the lower lake. I need to listen to the mountain and listen to myself. Today's not a good day to push that upper lake, and I should just leave it alone. Like, be honest with yourself and pay attention to that stuff so that you don't get yourself into that situation. I was very, very, very lucky that it wasn't worse. It very easily could have been, and I don't want you to get yourself into that situation. So, number one, trapdoor, don't be stupid. Number two is called cold plunge. So this goes back to one of my favorite tailwater canyons here in Colorado. It's a very famous canyon. Lots and lots of people fish it, especially in the summer season. And as a result, I really only go there in the winter, right? I don't want to deal with the crowds most of the time. The hike keeps some people out, but it still gets real busy. Lots of guides, lots of other stuff. So it's really kind of a winter fishery for me. It's where I go when I really need to get out and there's really not a lot of other options. And so I hike into this place and, keep in mind in the winter, it's cold, right? So the air temps are, on a mild day, they're 40-ish. On a cold day, they're in the 20s, or lower. The weather can be tough. And the water's really cold. Tailwater streams stay pretty consistent. They don't freeze most of the time. This is a tailwater pretty much right below a dam. And so it's not getting as cold as the freestones, but it's still pretty darn cold, right? We're talking like high 30s if you're not so lucky and low 40s if you are lucky. So it's pretty chilly. Anyway, I had hiked in there. I hiked in my big, heavy, insulated winter waders, which we talked about last season. I jumped in this frigid water. I had my jacket on, normal winter gear. And then I started fishing, right? I knew before I went, this was probably 3 seasons ago, by the way. So just so you have a timeline on it. Turns out I've been stupid for a considerable amount of time. Who knew? So anyway, I am down there in this canyon, in this frigid water, and there is across from me, I'm on one side of the bank, and on the other side of the river is this incredibly juicy rock where the water is coming in against the rock. It's creating a hydraulic cushion there. I can see that there's an undercut, and I know for a fact that there is a monster rainbow trout hiding underneath that rock, or maybe a brown. But either way, I know there's a big fish in there. The only problem is that to get to it, I have to wade through what looks like some pretty deep stuff around a series of other boulders in the river. I have said before, you should not wade too near large boulders in the river because the way they break and concentrate and channel the current often digs out these sort of like moats or trenches around them underwater that you can't really see. And so you can go from having you're in, a foot and a half of water. It's up to like your mid shin or your knee, to suddenly being in 5 feet of water because of the way the current has channeled out that sediment around the boulder. And I know this, right? Of course, I've waded hundreds of streams. I know these things. I've told you this tip before. And so I know you should stay away from those things. However, I really wanted to catch this big fish on the far side of the river. And so I did what any rational moron would do, and I ignored my own advice. I waded across the current, I waded over to the boulders, and then I attempted to pick my way around one of these other large boulders. And then I attempted to pick my way around one of these other large boulders to reach a good casting position. And so I'm going around this boulder, and again, frigid water, really cold air temps. I think the temps that day were like in the mid 30s. The air temps, water temps were probably about the same, to be honest with you. So I'm going around. I know to stay away from this rock, but there's like this kind of weird current patch, and I'm trying to dodge it. And I'm like, I'll just shoot around the rock and I'll be fine. Okay. I'm wearing a 25-pound backpack, same day pack that I always have with me. And I got too close to the boulder. So I'm going, the current kind of caught me a little bit. I took a step on the shelf next to the rock. I tried to take another step closer to the rock, and there was nothing to step on. There was just a pit around this rock. I lost my balance. I overcommitted to the step. I fell into the water, and I went for a swim. And not like a little swim, not like a splash and now my waders are wet. Like I went underwater. I went from being in probably 2 feet of water to being in 6 feet of water. I'm wearing a heavy backpack. I'm wearing waders. And I am suddenly completely submerged in this frigid water. It comes over the top of my waders. It comes over my head. And I'm swimming, like for real swimming. And in addition to like my heart almost stopping from the shock of being dunked into water that cold, now I'm in a really dangerous situation, right? Because I'm getting pushed downstream by the current. There's a pretty heavy current downstream of me, right behind me. And I'm in big trouble. I'm wearing heavy gear. And so I'm trying to rip my backpack off. By the way, you should always practice getting your backpack off in a hurry for exactly the same scenario, because it will drag you downriver and hang up on something or drown you. So be ready to get that thing off of you. Ditto with your waders if you have to. But, so I'm going down, and I got lucky again. A lot of these stories end with me getting lucky, and I caught the edge of a gravel bar. And so I was able to get myself up onto this gravel bar, and I was soaked. I mean, I'm like everything. My hat's wet. My jacket is soaked through. My waders are literally full of water up to basically down to my waist, where I have my real tight wading belt. By the way, these scenarios are exactly why you wear wading belts, so that it doesn't fill up your waders. But anyway, I'm in big trouble. Like, now I'm wet. And my backpack, because it went into the water with me too, and the backpack is not waterproof, it's not submersible. Well, now it's wet too, which means even my sort of spare clothes and my warm jacket, those are now wet as well. And so I crawl up on the sandbar or on this gravel bar, and I'm like, it's 30 something degrees outside. The water's 30 something degrees, and I am instantly shaking. I mean, I am cold out of the gate. And the wind is coming down the canyon, and it was like being shoved into a box of dry ice. I mean, it was brutally bone shaking cold. And I go into my backpack, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm in big trouble now. So I start stripping off my waders so I can drain them. I try to start stripping off my wet clothes so I can put on dry stuff, because I know how quickly hypothermia can happen. And I get to my backpack, and sure enough, everything is soaked. So no dry clothes for you, Ross. You're screwed. And then I start looking at my backpack, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna start a fire. I got to warm up. I'm gonna go get some wood, and I'm gonna start a fire. And I get my backpack, and I start rooting around, and I realize I don't have my ferro rod with me. I never don't have my ferro rod with me, but on this particular trip, I can't even remember why. I must have taken it out of my backpack, but didn't have it with me. And as a result, I did not have a means of starting a fire. So now I'm wet. I'm out of my waders. I'm exposed. I'm cold. I can't start a fire. And once again, this was real close to an SOS push for me. I was like, man, I might be in trouble here. I could be in big trouble. I'm starting to shiver. I'm starting to shake. Of course, those are early signs of hypothermia. And I'm like, uh-oh, this is a big deal. I wound up sort of getting off the gravel bar and finding a sunny spot that was just warm enough for me to kind of get myself gathered up and gather my strength. And I threw my waders onto my backpack, and I immediately put on my hiking boots. I took off my waders, obviously, and I put on my hiking boots, and I started hiking immediately, because at this point, like, the best thing I can do is try to get some body heat going from exercise. And thankfully, this is only about 1.5 mile hike out. I mean, it's you're hiking out of a pretty steep canyon, so I'm not going to say it's nothing, but it's not like hours away from the trail. I mean, you've got a little bit of grace when it comes to how far it is back to the truck. And I managed to make the hike out. I was cold the whole time. Once I crested the rim of the canyon and was exposed to the wind, I was exceptionally cold. And it was very miserable. It was. I'm sure I was hypothermic by the time I got back to the truck. I don't know what stage it was, but I was in bad shape because I threw my shit in there. I didn't even bother trying to organize it. I got in the truck, and I turned the heat up on full blast. And I sat in the truck for probably an hour, to be honest with you, just cooking myself in the heat to try to warm up. And I was still cold after that. I drove all the way home. It's about a 2-hour drive from where I live to this canyon. I drove all the way home, and I was still cold. So I had to draw up this incredibly hot bath when I got home. I call it the fish chills, when you get so cold out there that you just can't warm up, and the only thing you can do is jump in a hot bath. It's the fish chills. And I had I had worse than the fish chills. I had the you're going to die hypothermia chills. And so I had to go home and draw up a hot bath and sit in that for about an hour to warm up. And the only thing I could think is that if I had been any further out, if I had been in a different scenario or a different place, if the weather had been just a little bit worse, let's say it was 10 degrees colder, maybe it was snowing, whatever. Conditions had been just a little bit different. That could have been really dangerous for me. At a minimum, it could have been a rescue situation. It could have been a life-threatening situation pretty quickly. Hypothermia is serious business. Wet, cold water scenarios, especially in canyons that don't get a lot of sun, serious business. It could have been really, really bad. And so I was very fortunate to get out of that one unscathed again. ultimately, I learned a lot from the experience. It was a pretty scary experience, and it's not one that I want to repeat because here are the lessons for you. I will never again wade anywhere near a boulder that is breaking the current that way. I knew there were moats there before. Of course I knew that, but I ignored it, and as a result, I lost my balance and I went for a swim. I'm never going to do that again. Now, I avoid those things like the plague. If I think there's even a chance that there's a channel carved out around it, I just don't touch it. And that's doubly true in the wintertime when you are in scenarios involving extremely cold water and extremely cold air temperatures, which is a bad combo. So lesson number one, don't wade near those big boulders because they do get deeper than you think and you can go for a swim, and that could be really bad news for you. Lesson number two is keeping your extra clothes and something that keeps them dry, right? So I will stick mine down into like a garbage bag and just twist the garbage bag up a little bit to provide a little bit of a water seal. You can use a Ziploc bag. You can buy specialized garment sort of zipper bags from Amazon if you want. Whatever you use, though, it needs to be waterproof enough that if you were to fall in like I did, even if you're only in the water for, I don't know, I mean, I was probably only in the water for 20 seconds. You need something to keep your clothes dry, because if you can't get dry clothes on and you're wet and your clothes are wet and you don't have an option, that's a very dangerous situation. So do everything that you possibly can to keep your clothes dry when you are fishing, well, anywhere where you could get wet, which I suppose is everywhere, but especially in the wintertime. And just don't be stupid, right? I know winter's a little chiller. You're probably not going as far as you are in the summertime. It feels easier. It probably feels safer, but cold water is really dangerous stuff, guys. Don't be silly about it. That's story number two. The last one is called Ice Storm. Now, this was 2 summers ago, and I had decided that I was going to go. I was exploring my way through this wilderness area, which you guys know is my thing. And I decided I was going to do a day trip to this particularly remote lake on the backside of this mountain in a wilderness area in Colorado. Getting to this lake is no small thing. It's like a 2-hour drive out of the city. And then it's about another 2-hour drive up this incredibly rough 4x4 road that takes you up in the middle of nowhere, rock crawling and all kinds of stuff, and then cuts across the face of this other neighboring mountain before you reach the trailhead. And the trailhead is literally just a sign at the top of this like blasted ancient mining path that leads down into a basin with 2 lakes, one of which is right up against the mountain, the other of which is a little ways away. But it's extremely remote. There are really only 2 ways to access it. One of them is a really, really long hike, basically over the Continental Divide. The other one is this 4x4 road to the trailhead. I did the 4x4 road. Once you get there, you're actually hiking, unlike most high alpine lakes from this one, you are hiking down into the basin. And so I hiked it's about 1,000-foot drop down into this basin, made it over to the lake. It's only like a mile, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I mean, you've already driven for 2 hours on this brutal road and everything else. And that's how it works. The trick is that getting all the way to the trailhead is really problematic because the road gets worse and worse and walks across the face of this other mountain, like I said. And I've got a, big old Toyota Tundra. It's lifted. It's got nice shocks. It's good tires. I mean, it's made for off-road. Maybe not as much as like a dedicated Jeep, but it's a good off-road vehicle. And I got to sort of that last mile of road before the trailhead, and I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not driving over. I'm going to pop a tire up here. I'm going to roll off. It's like a 1,000-foot drop off the side of this mountain. I'm not going to do that. So I found some place to park, and I'm like, I'm just going to hike across this thing and get on the trailhead and go down to the lake. And that's what I did. I got out, got my shit, hiked down the road across the face of this other mountain, hiked my 1,000 feet down into the basin, went to the lake, caught my cutthroat. Now, keep in mind, I am probably 3 miles from my truck at this point, and all of this is above timberline. Okay, so I am 3 miles out. It's all above tree line, and there's really no particularly wonderful cover at the lake or anywhere before the lake. I mean, I guess there are a couple forested areas I could have dropped into, but pretty exposed stuff. I catch my fish, and I look up over the cirque. Keep in mind, this is like a 13,000-foot mountain, so it's kind of hard to see over, right? And I start seeing these like kind of wispy clouds coming over the top that are they're kind of darker than I'd like them to be. And I'm like, I don't know, that looks like a storm. I'm not sure about it, but the fishing was good. It was beautiful. I had driven all that way, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep fishing. I think it'll miss me. I think it's going to miss me. I'm watching the wind direction. I'm watching where the clouds are going. And so I decided that I would stay. And then I saw some more clouds come. They kind of looked like they were going to come over the top rim of the cirque. And then they didn't. They blew off the other way. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. I mean, by now it's like 12:30. And I'm like, these storms are going to miss me. I'm going to be out here for as long as I want. It's beautiful. And I'm thinking I'm good. And then I hear in the distance some thunder rumbling. Okay. Thunder rumbling means that it's time to go. Right? I mentioned before, if you can hear the thunder, then that means that it's close enough for you to be struck by lightning. So it's definitely time to pack up and go. And I'm like, well, I don't know, but the sky is blue and I can't even see the clouds. And so I grabbed my Garmin and I called down the Garmin forecast, and the Garmin forecast comes in from space and it says 0% chance of rain. It's like, I don't know, 12:30, 1 o'clock, like I said. And it's like 0% chance of rain until 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, okay, good. It's going to miss me. It's going to be great. And I knew that those forecasts are very often not accurate, because weather forecasts are really never that accurate in the mountains, right? You should just expect that you're going to get nailed by a thunderstorm in the afternoon. You just have to expect that. But instead, I was looking for an excuse to stay and fish. I wasn't making good decisions. Who knows why? Stupidity, hypoxia, altitude sickness, whatever, pick a thing. I was like, well, cool, I'm going to stay. And so I did. I stayed, got a few more fish, and then that storm really came up over the top of the mountain. And I mean, this is a big, nasty, black, dark storm up over the top of the mountain. Thunder, rain, sheets of rain that you can see coming from miles away. And I look up and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go. So I reel in my line real quick. I throw my rod together real quick. I shove it in the tube. I put the reel in my backpack. I put the backpack on and I start hoofing it. Now, you know, it's a mile back to the beginning of the trail, going back up to the trailhead. That's about a mile up. And then it's another mile back to my truck. So I'm 3 miles out. And now I have this storm chasing me. So I'm like running back to the trail, and then I'm climbing this incredibly steep sort of ascent back to the trailhead across loose rocks and talus and a bunch of other stuff. And as I'm about halfway up there, of course, the storm catches me, because it turns out that those storms move a lot faster than my legs do. Who knew? And it catches me, and it starts dumping rain on me, and it suddenly gets very cold. And I got out my rain jacket. I put on my rain jacket, and I keep trucking up the hill, and I make it up to the trailhead. And now I'm sitting on a trailhead that's at like 12,000 feet. So this is all exposed. And the top part of this trailhead across the face of this other mountain is completely exposed. I mean, it's probably 600 feet above the closest trees. No shrubs, no vegetation, nothing. Sky is black and boiling and ugly. There's lightning all around, thunder all around. And as I reach the top of the trailhead, the rain turns into ice. And I don't mean like kind of ice. I mean like it's raining little knives of ice on my face. I mean, it's cutting my face. It's getting in my eyes. It was freezing my sunglasses. I mean, it was brutal. And because I had to get out of that, I can't hang out there, right? I mean, the best you can do if you're going to hunker in a thunderstorm is like squat down on your tippy toes and hope nothing hits you. But this was so exposed, I really didn't even feel comfortable doing that. Going back down the slope, which is now slippery and slick from the rain, is not an option. And so my only option is to make it across this hill and get back to my truck. And that's what I had to do. And I got just pummeled. Rain, ice, thunder, lightning. It was a crazy experience. And to be honest with you, that last mile was one of the longest miles I've ever walked, because it was pretty scary, right? It's not the first high alpine thunderstorm I've been stuck in, but it might have been the most open ground that exposed I've ever had to cover before in a thunderstorm. And especially in a thunderstorm that is so brutal that it's whipping my face with tiny shards of ice the whole way. So I made it back to the truck. I didn't get struck by lightning, which might shock you. My face hurt for days. It was like red and ripped apart from the ice. The road was flooded on the way down. There was a lot of water on it, which of course made an already difficult 4x4 road even more difficult on the way down. And really the whole thing was just not safe. I mean, I got back to the truck limping and wet, and I'm soaked all the way through. My pants are soaked. My rain jacket, of course, kept me warm-ish. But it's almost soaked through. My hat is soaked, and I'm shivering and I'm cold. Yeah, it's July, but hey, you're getting beat up by ice storms at 12,000 feet in July because the mountains don't care. And this was a reminder to me, not the only reminder, I'll tell you other stories some other time, but this was a good reminder to me that you got to leave before the storms get there. Doesn't matter what the forecast says on that stuff. Doesn't matter if you get a satellite forecast that says otherwise. You got to use your Mark 1 eyeballs, look around you, and if you see anything that looks like a storm that might hit you, it's time to go. And even if you don't, you need to be heading out by 11 or noon. Does that mean that you're sometimes going to miss half days of fishing on these lakes? Yeah, it does. Does it also mean that you're not going to take the chance of getting caught in a thunderstorm and fried like a rotisserie chicken at King Soopers? Yes, it does, right? So I will leave it to you to decide how to balance those things out. But my two biggest lessons from this particular story were, number one, don't trust forecasts, even from reputable sources in the mountains. Just expect there's going to be a storm and plan to be down early. Don't be stupid. And number two, always make sure that you have the right gear with you. In this case, I had a heavy rain jacket and a wool cap that I could wear, which was what kept me warm enough to be okay. Had I not had those things, had I neglected my rain jacket and been up there in like shorts and a t-shirt, that would have been a very different experience. Number one, it would have hurt a lot and felt terrible. But number two, it very easily could have become life-threatening pretty quickly. I mean, again, that's how you get hypothermia. Bad stuff can happen to you. At the very least, you're going to be miserable. And at the worst, you could be in trouble and have a bad time. So once again, I got lucky. I had the right gear in this instance. So at least that's something. But really, realistically, I was an idiot for walking across that massive exposed space in a lightning storm when the right answer was just for me to leave when I had planned to leave. I got greedy. I tried to stay for more fish. And you know what? Speaking of when the mountain tells you no, sometimes you're just done. You caught the fish you were supposed to do. Maybe it was a big, beautiful one. Maybe it was 50 little ones, whatever. And the lake and the mountain are like, all right, bro, you got your fish. Get the hell out of here. It's time to go. I didn't do that. I was lazy and I was greedy and I decided to push it. And because I pushed it, I got myself stuck in a bad situation. And that is not something that you ever want to do when you're out there backcountry fly fishing. And that's my third story. I have other stupid stories that I will share with you. If you guys enjoy this episode, shoot me a note, Instagram, Facebook, backcountry fly fishing podcast @gmail.com. Let me know. Loved it, hated it. I always love to hear from you either way. But these are, I hope, kind of fun stories for you that show that I'm human and I make stupid errors just like everybody else does, especially stupid errors in my case more often than not. And I hope that it provided a tool for you to learn what not to do at my expense, because there's no better way to learn what not to do than laughing at somebody else who's an idiot so that you didn't have to be. So hope you liked it. Let me know in the comments. I'm going to put in my normal plug here to say that if you have not had a chance to review the show, please do leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. If you're going to leave less than 5 stars, I mean, that's cool if it's honest, but please at least send me a note to tell me why you did it or write a review to tell me why you did it. I really want this podcast to be enjoyable and fun and useful to you. And it's hard for me to do that if I'm not getting feedback from you about what didn't work in a given episode if you didn't like it for whatever reason. If you think it's awesome, then feel free to write that too. I mean, those are the best kind, and I love reading them. But feedback of all kinds is welcome and appreciated. So thank you guys for that. Love hearing from you. But otherwise, I hope you're having a great week. We'll be back here next week with another episode, our next iteration of Complaint Corner, which is all about spot burning. Ooh. And that'll be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to that. And I will see you guys back here for that in just a little bit. Until then, take care, catch those fish, be good, and don't be stupid. Till next time, this is Ross. Maybe I'll see you out there. Unless I get fried because I ignored my own advice.